Okay, it says we're live. For people watching the recording, hang out for a minute while we do some housekeeping. We got to let Zoom and YouTube sync up, and then we got to share some links. All right. I got the link. Put it in the Telegram. All right, got that link going on. Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. This is the Permissionless Software Foundation Technical Steering Committee meeting. I am Chris Troutner. I started the PSF and I run fullstack.cash, which is cloud infrastructure for the Bitcoin Cash and eCash chains, as well as JavaScript developer for hire consulting for helping entrepreneurs start new projects. Let's go around and do some quick intros. Aaron Shoemaker, you want to start us off?
Aaron Shoemaker, been with the PSF for a long time, currently working on Next.js, and so been learning that, and hopefully I can talk with you, Chris, about how we can take some of the React apps and make them next ones, maybe, if it benefits. So
yeah, we're gonna circle back around to that in the agenda. There's an app in particular, the metrics app, that I think would be a good one to write in Next.js. Yeah, Stoyan, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Stoyan Zhekov. I helped with some of the JavaScript libraries for the foundation. So from me.
And you regularly blow our minds with interesting ideas, which I would like to maybe next time we meet, have you do that. That would be great.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Greetings, Aaron Sudman. Been a big fan of the Permissionless Software Foundation and the concept of permissionless innovation anyway. So glad to be a part of this. And I've been using a lot of the tools that's been developed by the Permissionless Software Foundation for the past couple of years and really impressed by it. And I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Okay, well, I am going to share my screen and we'll dive into this agenda. As always, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. As always, our agendas are filed on GitHub in the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group in a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee. We file them as issues. So this is issue number 56. The scope of our meetings cover these projects. And so people can come check these issues out at any time. We leave them up and we leave the links. So we got a few tech updates. We got no governance updates. I got a few tech updates and a demo to give. As always, I encourage people to interrupt me at any time, and love going down the little side quests and answering questions. So a couple quick tech updates. Minimal SLP wallet, that's our JavaScript wallet engine that works on both the browser and on Node.js. There was a breaking change to the get balance and get token balance function calls, and instead of having discrete input parameters, we're now using an input object. So this breaks backwards functionality or backwards compatibility, but it doesn't really change the functionality at all. I'm starting to do this with a lot of my, so here's the token balance, for example. So instead of giving it like a token ID and an SLP address as a discrete input, you're wrapping it in an object. And by doing it this way, any changes we need to make down the road by adding extra optional arguments, like will maintain backwards compatibility from this point. And so that's the big advantage of using input objects over discrete input parameters. So I'm starting to do this with a lot of this is just a general pattern I'm starting to follow in my code. So that's worth noting. Yeah, Jet Scythe. He's a developer in the Bitcoin Cash space. Talk to him all the time. Went to the conference with him. He was playing around with some of the older NFT parent-child calls in BCH.js, and he was like, "Why are these not working?" And I looked into it. Turned out they depended on SLPDB, and so I've officially removed them from BCH.js. Like nobody's using them because they haven't worked in like over a year. Um, and he was confused because they existed in the API reference, but there are PSF SLP indexer calls that you can make, and the response will return that parent and child information. So once I clued him in on that, it was all good. But so they've just officially been removed. IPFS service metrics. So I resurrected that. This is an app I wrote about a year ago that monitors our IPFS network and then writes the results to the pay to write database. So now that the pre-burn ticket feature is complete, which I'm going to talk about next, I wanted to resurrect this app and start collecting metrics. So it runs every 12 hours. And in fact, I've got an example here. So when it writes, so this is our database explorer at explorer.fullstack.cache. Make this a little bigger. And so this is just a way to look at data that's in the PaidWrite database. So this one's adding it with this app ID PSF IPFS metrics 2. And if you want to click on it, you can see the data. So right now it's just monitoring the PaidWrite database instances that it can find. And so there's 2 of them. There's the one that I run, which I need to change the name for. And then there is the one that's being run by Launchpad for their NFT service, which I also am hoping to demo today. And this is useful information. So there's like a latency score. So from the perspective of this node, it's 7 times faster to talk to this pay-to-write database versus this pay-to-write database. So this is like really useful metric information for scaling our network. And it's all subjective because it's all from the perspective of this node. And so that's one of the cool things about our software, how it reconfigures based on these latency scores. So that's what's going on with service. So this is the app that I thought would make a good Next.js project. So I'm trying to learn Next.js and brush up my TypeScript skills, get a little deeper with it. And
you don't have to use TypeScript with it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm kind of doing this just to practice. Like
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little long in the tooth, and I'm going through a lot of job descriptions right now, reading through them. And I see Next.js and TypeScript's on all of them, and I see Next.js frequently. So it seems to be the clear trend on both of them.
Interfaces, TypeScript interfaces.
Yeah. I mean, they are nice, especially with VS Code and the way it's able to pick up the create the auto documentation essentially. That's a big value add. I've always come back to like the juice isn't worth the squeeze for me because I do TDD and 100% test coverage. I just don't get enough value to justify the expense of wrestling with a new tool. But the industry's trajectory is pretty clear, so I'm gonna do what I've done in the past, which is kill my ego and eat a little humble pie and nut up and lean into it.
I think they're pushing that way just because when you're working with multiple people, being able to declare the types helps overall not have such a big problem. But yeah.
Well, so this service metrics app, so all it's doing is it's just a Node.js app that just writes data to the database. So we need a front end, and possibly a back end that can like, rather than getting the data on the fly from the pay-to-write database, we should maybe just cache that in a back end app, a really small one, so the front end can just get that nice data that's already prepared for it from the back end, and just like, and this is the thing is, so we're at a very good starting point. The code base is small, and it's just doing a very simple thing, which is looking at the pay-to-write database instances on the network. So I think the next like couple things I wanted to do is like look for all the cache stack instances on the network and report those. And then there's also things like it could query npm and record like how many installs of BCHJS happened that week, or minimal SLP wallet. Like those would be great metrics. And then like we could record the price of Bitcoin Cash and the price of the PSF token, and and also the total tokens in circulation, because that should be going down as the PagerDuty database gets more popular. More PSF tokens will be burned, and so we should see a nice downtrend over time of the PSF token. So those would all be great metrics to be tracking on a 12-hour basis. And then we would need a Next.js front end app to like display
Well,
that data.
The thing is, now with 13, and you could do this with 12, but even more with 13, it is the back end app. So the front
Yeah,
end,
that's what you're
like
telling me.
anything that you want to do, where the user is going to interact, you can make a use client component, entire page a use client, and you can then take that component and import it into a page. So you could have a page that is a server-side page that's connecting to the database and pulling information. As long as that information is not something that the client is changing or updating, you're fine with just having that server-side page. It talks to the database. That's it. You don't need anything. It's like you don't need Express in between like that. And then if you want to have any user interaction, what I typically do is I make a client component and then I just import it into the server-side page where I want to use that. So then the rest of it just lives on the server.
Yeah. I've got some code for graph component React component libraries for making real nice graphs.
Yeah,
that's what we need, is like to visualize the data and then figure out the persistence, what type of database, or even if we need one on the server side.
I think Jerry is in the chat about Next.js.
Oh yeah, I can't see the chat because I'm sharing my screen. So yeah,
performance is really nice. Also simplifies Express and front end together. I think when you use hooks, you have to use client. Yep, you do. API routes are all placed in the same folder directory as the regular pages. They are, and here's another thing about the routes is you don't have to have them in the API folder. Like I was showing you guys earlier, like I just have them in there to organize them. But say you you want that, what is the price of BCH, and this is its own component, right? And so you have you don't necessarily have to stick everything in components folders anymore. You could just have like a price of BCH folder, and then it'd be like price of BCH.tsx, and then in there could be another folder which is the BCH API route, and then in there you'd have a route.ts, which would be your API. So you can organize it that way so that like that route is right where that is in the file structure. And when you're calling it in the bar, so like it would be whatever the name of the domain is /BCH price /BCH API, and that would be the call. And so like in the TSX of the BCH price, you would just have a fetch to the ./BCH price API, and then that would just take care of it right there. So you don't have to worry about routing different places. It's really up to you how you want to organize it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into the nuance of all this. Stoyan and Aaron Sunman, have you guys ever used Next.js? Do you guys have any opinions on that?
I've not used it. I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like it'd be a nice, well, one, if it's out there and supported and needed by lots of employers, it's always good to have something like that as a skill. But it sounds like a good option to learn for this.
Yeah. Yeah, Stoyan, do you have any experience with it?
A little most of the tutorials that I've made was in Next.js. This
Okay.
pointer.gg and one more, what was like build something.
Well, yeah, you were showing us the hooks, being able to do like EVM hooks, and I think that was in Next.js when you were showing us that, or maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah, some of them was Next.js. So yeah, I was talking about Next.js before maybe a year.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. That's what I wanted to confirm. As I know I'm late to the party here.
Yeah, it's actually better that you're late, because 12 to 13 was such a radical departure. So
Yeah.
12, they had a pages folder, and in the pages folder, you would you set up your routing differently. Now they got rid of the pages folder entirely. You just have an app folder, and in the app folder is your entire program. And like I was saying, if you want to set a page, like you want to create a npm downloads page, maybe you want that to be its own page, you would just have npm downloads as a file, and in that you'd have a page.tsx, and in there you would have your React code in your JSX. Or so if you want a link, Next has a nice link component. You just import link from Next, and then you just, instead of doing an ahref, you do a link, and you reference it. Let's see. I'll look at my nav bar just to, yeah, you do a link and then an href and then the page that you want to link to. So it makes it easier, and there's, you can also do I haven't got into it and haven't actually used it yet, but you can do server side functions. So like in a client side, you can write a server side function and declare it as a server side function and have it run. And that just came out with 13.4 back in May.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
Yeah, the server side component concept is really intriguing to me, and the fact that you can you have one framework that is both your front end and your back end.
yeah.
That seems like something that we've been trying to get for a long time. Yeah,
And
I'm looking forward to digging even deeper, and I think this would be a good project. This service metrics. Like right now we have just basic data, so we can. I'll probably just start by building a front end for this, just to display that basic data over time, and then we can start adding new data.
Jerry just brought up next image is another good one. Although, so like next image will optimize your whatever image you put in your public folder, it'll optimize that. But here's the thing though, they are using Vercel's API through AWS. So if you go over a certain number of images, you should be fine if it's just a site, right? I think it's something like 1,000 images or 10,000 images where they start to charge you per image. But essentially what next image does is it optimizes the images for all the different viewports. So
wow,
it will just take that one image, instead of you having to go and say, all right, I've got a 600 by 400, I need to make sure I've got a 200 by 300 and blah 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 on down, need to make sure they're all WebP, so they deliver very fast. You can just be like, well, here's my JPEG, call it next image, and then it goes and takes care of that through the Vercel API.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting trade-off.
Yeah. So you can use it if you want. If you're going to do a photo site, I would probably say find a different way to optimize your images, because they start to charge you after a certain number. So, but for something like this, wouldn't be a problem. Also, Tailwind, if you create a next app, you can opt into Tailwind, which is really nice, because I've loaded Tailwind myself just straight, and there's a little bit of steps for the configuration, but if you just do it in the next app, boom, it's really easy to use.
What does Tailwind do?
Tailwind allows you to in a way, you can write CSS, but it's shorthand right in the component. So like as I'm doing a component, actually, if you want to let me share my screen, I can show you exactly what some of this does.
Sure.
I probably, yeah, I've got some Tailwind right here. So you declare class name, and then this is like Tailwind shorthand. And so
Okay.
like if I come in here and I'm saying anything above a small screen, which is set at 640 pixels, is going to be flex. I could come here and I can go small, and then I can choose anything like that. Let's go back to flex, and let's just go background. So now this gives me a selection of background colors, and I can
Cool.
just quickly go through and select it. So it makes it really fast to style it. And then if you want to, you can also create groups. So you can say, okay, this anything in this group is this, and what it goes through it is that is sorry, that's my daughter.
Yeah.
So if you do groups, it'll go through and it'll take any of these. These are like micro things. So it's like the background is white. The Z index for this one is 50 because I need it to pop out. The transition is opacity. I'm setting the duration. Let's see here. In the dashboard. So here's the head of the dashboard here. And what all this, I see, baby. All this is, so I'm declaring what it is. I can set screen width. I can declare colors. And like this right here, I'll probably go back through since this is all the same thing. And I can make it a class. And then we can come over to our Tailwind config, and this is where you, if you want to really get customizable, you can come in here and say, all right, here's where I'm going to set my screen widths, and that's what it's going to represent. I added some heights because I wanted to add more.
Oh, okay. So this is more like a CSS file where you're
it's
defining
similar.
classes.
It's like a config thing. So bring it
Okay.
over. It's like a config thing, and it's similar to CSS. And then you can come in, and if you want to make actual classes, I can come into this global CSS, and here is where I'm making classes, and this apply function allows me to apply these Tailwind classes to anything I come in and say, all right, I want this to be a Tailwind. So like when we've got a form for the entertainers to sign up down in the Formix section here, anything that is the field, which I got this imported from other stuff, but anything that's a field has the field in the Tailwind name. So
Okay.
that's down in forms.
Control.
So
Interesting.
yeah, form elements. So like here we got a text. So right here we got class name as field. Well, that's not actually a CSS class. That's the Tailwind class. So
okay.
that comes back to
Right.
my global.css, and it applies all of this setting to it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Sorry for the monochrome. I just don't like typing colors.
It's cool.
Yeah.
To each their own. Well, yeah, let's get back to the agenda. I want to show you guys the pre-burn ticket feature, and then also give you a couple demos. So the pre-burn ticket feature is live. There's not really anything to demo because the effect is that it just sped everything up. And so there's a new version of the P2WDB NPM package, And so that's the client package that most people are going to use to write to the pay to write database. You can write to any pay to write database just by setting the URI there. And so that's been updated. And so from the end user's perspective, to take advantage of this, all they have to do is update the pay to write database, their local JavaScript library, and everything will just run faster. Like nothing really changes. You're still paying Bitcoin Cash to write, and all the ticket stuff is being handled on the server side. And so everything, and it's so what is that like? So the NFT creator app, it used to take 15 minutes, and now it takes 4 minutes. So that's a significant speed up. I guess that'd be almost 4x. And then I also wanted to show you guys the Token Tiger NFT creator app, which is built on the same concept as the NFT creator app. So that's also greatly sped up. But before we get to that, I want to show you guys local trade list. I've been playing with that quite a bit. So this is also riding on top of the pay to write database. The store locations are SLP group tokens, and so they can generate NFTs. And so what I added recently is this feed on the right. So any maps that are in view of or any pins that are in view in the map will show up on the feed on the right, or if you're on a mobile device, it'll be on the bottom. And then you can click on something on the feed to bring up its pin. And then we've talked about the group moderation features of like anybody can click a not safe for work or a garbage. And then I, as the admin for this particular instance, just set a threshold. I don't get to decide like what's not safe for work or what's garbage. Like just the people using this app, if they feel like that, they can click on the button. And that's also an on-chain claim. So all this data is on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. All the data itself is coming from IPFS and being pinned by our pinning cluster that's running on top of the pay to write database. But the actual data is anchored in the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. And then there's a claim button that I still need, that's hidden because I don't have the functionality, but that'll let you leave comments. People will be able to leave reviews about stores. And then you can also leave claims on claims, so you can leave comments on comments, and those will all go on chain, the comment data. And then there will be a block button similar to like in Twitter. If you just don't want to see it anymore, that'll just hide it on your personal, it'll go into your browser cache. And so it'll just hide that store if you don't want to see it anymore. But yeah, I'm already starting like this D-Rock Propane. This is a guy down the road that he lets me pay Bitcoin Cash for propane, and he does excavator work. And there's another company on the island that sells gravel that I'm going to list. It's not really just to promote crypto. It's you can use any the point of this app is just to let neighbors trade with neighbors and encourage. So there's, I don't know if it'll let me create a store. Yeah, so you can click create store and create a store, and it takes like a little bit of Bitcoin Cash to do this, like about 5 cents. And I think what I'm going to do is create a faucet, so that if someone tries, because what I've noticed by showing it to a few people is they immediately go try to create a store, and then it fails because they don't have any Bitcoin Cash. So
Right.
I think what I'll do is I'll have a separate faucet that it calls, and I'll just only keep like $5 at a time in there. And and at some point hopefully this will just be a bootstrapping effort. Once the thing kind of gets more stores, and if it takes off, then I'll probably just kill the faucet. But yeah, you just place a pin where your store is, you fill out these 4 boxes, and bam, you got a store. And so everything's open. And then once the store is created, this create store turns into edit store, and you can add products to your store. And so here's an example of a store with products, or like this, yeah, the gravel guy here. So there's a description, and then I took a picture of his propane thing under products, and there's a profile page, which is just like our token explorer. So this is for that token that represents that store. You click that profile link, and it gives you the store info. This is mostly made as more of a directory than a functional like e-commerce store. Like it's really intended to like to, if you have your own website, like, you know, send people there. That's kind of the products are just for people who don't have their own website. They can list up to 2 products. And but then you can kind of dig into the token metadata if you're a geek like us. All the data's there, all the JSON, and even the Genesis data for the token. So you can click on any of those stores and bring up that profile page. And yeah, so that's where it's at right now. Like I said, I need to make it a little more friendly for non-crypto people, so they can just click and create a store. And then I need to create some help videos on like walk people through the concepts of a store and clicking these not safe for work buttons, and then, you know, being able to leave comments is going to be a big one. Just by talking to people, that's one of the main features that they've asked for, is like, well, how do I ask this store, like, because, like, you know, there's a lot of baked goods here on the island. Some people make baked goods, and so they're like, well, how could I request them to make like a different baked good? And so it's like, oh, you can leave a comment. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this thing, you know, if I'm able to get some grassroots movement on this thing as it becomes easier to use. And you know, it might go completely sideways and become horrible. There might be just like all sorts of nasty shit on here. You know, that's one possibility too. I'm creating more, like, I have when you create the back end, you can set an admin address, and so any not safe for work or garbage claims made by that address like automatically get respected. You don't have to wait for it to meet the threshold. And so that's like an example of a feature that makes so like I had a bunch of like test stores in here, and I encourage people to just create test stores or whatever, because I can go through and just basically zap them with my admin key. And that's only changing the data on this instance. Like if you spin up your own instance, the data is all there, and you can have control over what you show.
Gotcha. Well,
that's the thing I really like about this is that, like, the data is still there. I cannot delete any of this data.
Right. Well, okay. So one, I have to say that it is a big deal to make it so that you could filter by zooming in, right? Because sometimes, especially as you get to thousands, if you can all of a sudden zoom into your city, bam, it takes care of that. That's a huge feature. I could see how it could go sideways, because I could see, depending on who grabs it and starts doing it. But I mean, I think this is the kind of stuff you build it and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think this is such a powerful and subtle idea of the data cannot be deleted. All you can do is change how it's displayed on this one instance. If anybody can spin up a new instance and have access to all the data.
Right. Awesome.
That's a powerful idea, but it's also subtle, because like you've got to really want it, right? Like you've got to be so pissed off at the current instance that you're going to make the effort to spin up your own backend and get it working. I mean, it's not a hugely high bar, but it's, you know, it's not a trivial amount of effort either. Well,
yeah,
so that's
nice job.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm playing with. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm hoping in the next couple months I can get it, you know, to a really user-friendly level where the people around here on my island start using it, and then I'm just gonna start going out and finding cool businesses, like especially local businesses, like local butchers and local farmers, and getting them all listed, just because that's what I want. And I'm gonna start encouraging other people to do that too. I'm gonna create some business cards. If you guys want some, let me know. I'll mail them out to you. But it'll have the local trade list, and then it'll have 12 words on the back. And that way I can just create a store for my friends and the people in my community, and put the 12 words that control it on the card, and just give them a physical card and be like, here's your store. Like, I created it for you,
right,
and I can edit it for you. And these 12 words control the store. So just put these away in case you ever need them.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm hoping that's my bootstrapping plan. Like I think I could get it going for all the normies, because I with that technique of onboarding people by just giving them a physical object and being like, here's your crypto. You own crypto now. Like, just hang on to this card.
Here's your store. It's
Yeah.
this card right here, right? That's a pretty amazing concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, store's just controlled by these 12 words. Put them into the app, and there's your store, and you can change your products and, you know, ease into it.
Right.
Well, yeah, let me give you guys a demo here of tokentiger.com. This is another site I would love for you guys to play with and give me some feedback. This is, you've probably heard me refer to Launchpad IP in the past, and they're a PSF member. They have one of our governance tokens, and they've been contracting me to help them mostly with just the architecture. And Daniel, who has done a lot of work for the PSF in the past, he's working for them. And this is all his work. He does the actual heavy lifting and coding. So it's at tokentiger.com. I'm just bringing this up now because this is basically the official launch of the alpha. So it's alpha. We're expecting it to be buggy. We don't want people to get too nuts with this thing. We're just telling it to a limited number of people, because I know not many people are going to be watching this, so this counts as a limited number of people. But it's free. You can sign up. You don't need any Bitcoin Cash for this site. And every time you load it, the logo changes on the right here. But so we're looking for tiger artwork. So if you make any cool like tiger themed artwork with Stable Diffusion or Dolly, send it our way, and we'll probably use it in the splash page. So yeah, you just hit create an account, just a email and password, and or log in if you already have one. There's this like legal disclaimer at the beginning you got to click through, and it calls out wallet.fullstack.cash. That's compatible. You can send any NFTs you make with this app to the web wallet, and they'll be compatible. And so before I create an app, I want to just show you a collection. Like, here is a collection of NFTs that I created. So it's pulling up, it's just basically image-based NFTs. A big part of this site is just to show like how easy it is to make NFTs and how cheap it is to make NFTs. And so if you click on like the question mark, it'll take you to our token explorer at token.fullstack.cash, where you can see all the information about this token. And you can create these shareable collections. So I have a collection, there we go. And so I've created this shareable collection, and this red button on the right will get me the link to the shareable collection. So I can put more tokens in here. And then if I open up a private window, just mimicking another user that's not logged in like I am. Oh, that's not the right address. Okay. That's our YouTube video. So this gives you a link that you can like share on social media. Like, you could put this on Twitter or send it to a friend or whatever, and then they can come in and look at the tokens that you want to share. Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. So yeah, so now I can share them, and yeah, it's just the picture. So that's it's a basic sharing feature. So when you create the tokens, they're private by default. You can send them to like your wallet.fullstack.cash, to your own wallet, or you can send them to a shareable collection. And then creating one is just a couple clicks, so it automatically drops you in here. You can just grab a picture. Here's one of a penguin, and that's all you have to do. Everything else is optional. But like, I like to give it a name like penguin, and then I can hit create. And this process takes 2 minutes and 20 seconds to create an NFT, and it was a lot longer than that. But it's been sped up because of that pre-burn ticket feature that we just added to Pay2Write database.
Yeah, I like the animations and everything else too. I've created a couple of, in fact, I'm creating a tiger one right now as we speak. So
nice.
It'd be fun to see what happens if we're doing them simultaneously, concurrently having things happening. But yeah, I'm this is neat to see. I like how simple it is, and I like the animations that feel like, hey, it's doing something, as well as it actually is doing something. Yeah, that added a lot to the usability feature of it.
Thanks. That's great feedback. Yeah, we've been every week I meet with the team and we all make tokens at the same time just to get a little concurrency. And yeah, we've been finding bugs on a regular basis. So yeah, like I said, this is an alpha, and so anybody should expect bugs. Like, reload the page if you have an issue and try again. And it, like, right now, it doesn't cost anything. We cover all the transaction fees on the back end with Bitcoin Cash. We'll eventually charge to make a token, but for now it's free for just alpha testers.
Right.
And then if people want, if they're super geeky like us, you can take your NFTs and send them over to ownrare.art or set up our decentralized exchange DEX and sell them on there. So
yeah, I think that's what I can't wait to really get doing, is to where we can make it really easy to create like this, make it the user experience really great, be able to sell them. I mean, there's a lot of people. I talked to quite a few people recently that have been photographers and have really actually shut down their business because COVID has caused them to have no mechanism for selling anything. They're artists that have all of this art. And
yeah, they can't go to a farmer's market and sell. Like, they shut all those down back during lockdown.
Right. And they haven't been brought back. I mean, there are certainly some art galleries that are back alive again and stuff, but many have been closed. So making a simple mechanism for them to say, you know what, I've got all the stuff I created. Why not do something with it? And most of it, not all of it, but most of it was at least digital at some point, right? Most cameras were all digital. Most people are creating on their iPad with pencils, and then some people are painting and taking a photo of it. But either way, it does at some point become a digital item. So this is going to be a nice interaction. And I think one of the biggest things also is that because you're storing things on IPFS, it's not stored on a local web server like I have currently for mine. So there's a lot of things that I feel like have a long-term viability and don't require our systems to keep going for them to exist.
Yeah, well said. Well said. There's two kind of features coming down the pike that I'm pretty excited about. One is very cypherpunk and one is more mainstream. But the cypherpunk one, so Daniel, who's doing all the coding, I think it was the OpenAI documentation, like their API documentation. He was not able to access that from Venezuela. There's all sorts of little things like that. Like, he's not able to access the Google Maps API. That's why local trade list is written with the leaflet map, because that's open source. And Google, there's a lot of Google services that are not available in Venezuela.
Wow. I knew that in China, but I had no idea about Venezuela.
Yeah, just American company. It's not like they're legally required to restrict it. They're just American companies with an abundance of caution, trying to keep all of us consumers safe and toe the line with the government. And like, Venezuela is a clear case of like, they don't need to do that. They're just doing it because someone in corporate didn't figure out that it was just easier to blanket the whole country than, actually do what's legally required, the minimum. But so we were talking about, well, why don't we just turn the documentation into an NFT, and then we can send the NFT to Daniel. And so yeah, that's oh, hey, nice tiger artwork.
I like it.
Just shared on the Telegram channel. Yeah, so that's the cypherpunk idea, is if we can kind of get a little more mainstream adoption of NFT usage. I mean, the capturing a piece of artwork is just the tip of the iceberg. That's like probably the simplest use case of an NFT.
Well, I think NFTs they're right now in their almost 0 point whatever stage. I think we haven't seen, there's the utilities, because they exploded with like, oh, we can do artwork and stuff like that. They exploded in people's minds as this is the application. But I think there's a lot more applications, like you're showing with the trade list, markers, things like that. When it comes to the maps, another thing Daniel may want to look at is the AGIS.
Oh,
So that's a
well, this was a
format.
couple years ago when we made that GeoDrop game.
Yeah,
And
the
then
form.
local trade list is built on top of that code base.
So the format for like the AGIS data is like, all a bunch of map data, uses CSVs and load them into databases for stuff like that. So that was actually the route I went for our application when I was trying to map instead of making a call to Google's API all the time, I was like, I'll just make it. So I mapped, I got all the data for the roads and the cities and stuff like that, and I just mapped them across the a Neo4j database. I say just mapped them. It took a while to do, but
yeah, I remember you showing me that data. That was cool.
Yeah. So that's another way. Like, if I were to do another country or something like even like Venezuela, I might grab one of those AGIS maps, and then you can take that, and there's an open source like AGIS like viewer stuff where you can manipulate the vector points and stuff like that. But then you can export that data to something that you'd like to use, and you have that. As long as they don't create any major new roads, you don't have to update it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, so yeah, using an NFT to package data was, kind of the cypherpunk idea. And because the mutable data is actually stored on IPFS, it can be as big as you want it to be. And so that's one cool thing of these NFTs. But the more mainstream one, totally forgot what I was going to say about that. Oh, POAPs. Yeah. And so what I just demoed, uploading a picture, like imagine doing that and getting a shareable link, but then the link is only good for like a period of time, like for an hour, like during this meeting. I could show a QR code that's a link, and you can go there and claim your NFT for proof. So POAP is proof of attendance protocol, and I've seen it used in a lot of the DAOs when they have meetings, and so it's just like a badge that you show off to like prove that you were there, and so it's like, like today when we do the agenda, I'm like, oh, it's issue number 56. Well, if someone looked at your social media address and they saw that you had like 50 POAPs and there's been 56 badges, that's just like, that's kind of proof of skin in the game, or like it's proof of attendance. So it's like, oh, this guy's clued in because he's attended like a huge majority, or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about because he's only got like 3 badges and there's been 100 meetings. So like he's only attended 3 of them. And so it's an interesting idea, like these proofs of social participation.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, these are the kind of things that they're super inexpensive to create, but very, very difficult to fake. I mean, you cannot actually fake them. So it's really difficult to know how to be for humanity to have something that's so inexpensive to create, but so difficult to fake. I mean, it just changes things, and it's hard to say how that's going to be played out longer term.
That's true. We need better ways of authentication. So
it comes. You have to. The thing about that particular problem is that the solution requires forethought. Like you have to preemptively create the token so that later maybe you can prove that you were there. And as long as it's really cheap, we can do that. But it just like, it's a systemic issue. Like the system has to do that because you can't go back and do it later. So you have to have a system in place that preemptively does it. And I think that's the direction things are heading. I think that's a broad trajectory. I mean, I was talking with someone at Yuga Labs yesterday, and we were talking about different ways to do gaming, because that's a hard problem to solve with blockchain. Everybody wants to put games on the blockchain, but there's a lag. Like this was such a huge 4x increase in time with this pre-burn ticket idea, and all that time lag is just all the infrastructure required to read and write to the database and IPFS. And so like NVIDIA, like Avalanche, they only have, they say they have 2-second finality, which is great, but 2 seconds is a long time in a video game.
Right.
And when you add extra infrastructure, that's probably going to increase to like 5 seconds, which is a really long time to wait in a video game. And so, I was talking to him about different strategies. It seems like the go-to strategy is like keep everything internal, use Web2 tech, and keep everything internal as a database, and then you just use on-chain to import and export assets from the game. And because just trying to do things like hit movements or something silly like that on chain would just like
No, that doesn't make
it's
sense.
pointless, and it just doesn't scale.
They're trying to do hit points on chain.
Well, no, I was just giving a bad example.
Yeah.
No, I mean, actually, there is a good example of that. Crypto Fights on BSV attempted to do that, and they were actually scaled, and they were, my friend actually worked on it. He was one of the developers of it, but they shut down because even with BSV, it was too much.
Yeah,
it was really a huge amount, and they found a really interesting way of doing it so that it wasn't actually transaction. They actually grouped them, but it's still, even with all of that, it was just massive.
If I were like, if it were me and I were designing this, what I would do is I would design to write at the open and closing of sessions, and then I would use something like Gun.js to provide temporary permanence. So Gun.js is a great protocol. It's like a peer-to-peer type of a server protocol that would allow you to participate in a game and then share the information of the game while it's going on. And then once you close out, then it would write, or it would write in the background. And then, but what you're playing with acts as if the write has already happened, So it's the same thing way I'm approaching like the scheduling thing I showed you. When they fill out the schedule, to them, it looks like it happened. On the back end, it takes a little bit to write, but also one of the things I'm doing so that I don't double write is I'm erasing what's in state once the write comes back, but to them, it still looks like it's there. So like it's got that feedback, like it's there for them, but what's happened on the back end is different. And that's how I would approach the gaming stuff, where you wouldn't write everything. You'd have a collection of stuff, and then you'd probably have something like a checkpoint or a save point. And at that point,
that's the trade-off that I'm seeing is finality. Is like if with the technique that you just described, you're pushing finality out. So the problem with that is like if something happens in that period before the data is final, like before it gets written to the blockchain or the database or whatever, I think that like if you're talking about like a game with assets and someone dies and gets the $1 million asset or they don't, and it's like a timing like finality becomes really important in that scenario. And so that I think that's where that scaling technique you just described sort of breaks down, but it depends on the use case. Like, I mean, that's a pretty extreme example that I just gave.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it breaking down in that position. I think the idea of like we're just going to write interactions to the blockchain, to me it would be like, all right, the token creation, like you showed the tiger thing, and it's showing the process. Well, you could do a fake out and be like, here's your token, and you could be like temporary token, and you show it as it's going to show in the UI while it's happening in the background. They move on, it's already happened in the background, and then next time they come back, that's the permanent token. And then people wouldn't even feel like they're waiting, even though they are waiting. They just don't feel like they're waiting.
Well, and that's something we're thinking about doing with Token Tiger, is that because even though we reduced the time down to 2 minutes and 20 seconds, that's still a long time for people to wait. So we might just put it into the background and like, I don't know, put a little icon in there, like, because we can make it appear in the app like the token exists right away.
Yeah,
and we can just put a little like icon in the corner to let them know like it's it's not done yet. And then when the icon goes away, that means it's done. And you can like export the token from your wallet. It's like, it's a real token
baking.
now. Yeah, it's basically
baking.
baking. Yeah. Yeah. And so that would improve the user experience by giving the illusion that it's creating tokens is much faster.
Yeah. I think it's all about the UI at the, people feeling like it's happening. And then, it happens in the background. And if there's an error, then you explain, there was an error. Let's try it again,
Yeah, and I think that's the difficult, like if you make them wait, then that's a much simpler UI. So it is a UI thing. Like if you want to give them that improved experience, it comes at the cost of like significant development. Like you have a whole bunch of new screens that you have to develop to, handle the exceptions and display the different states.
Oh yeah.
So it's all a trade-off. Well, that's everything from the agenda, guys. I'm glad I got to show it all to you. I'm pretty stoked about local trade list. I'm pretty proud of how Token Tiger's coming along. Daniel's been doing some great work there. I'm gonna try and reach out to the Toshi fan art club. If you guys don't know about them, they're a Telegram group. Yeah, Aaron, I know you're in there. There's this little cartoon character called Toshi. I'm not exactly sure how it even came about. Aaron, you can fill us in on that. But
yeah,
they make this fan art, and everyone, like for Valentine's Day, they had a contest, and they make NFTs out of their art, and they were using the NFT creator. So I'm going to try and encourage them to go use Token Tiger for their next event.
I think they absolutely will. I mean, so Aaron from Collab, Bitcoin Collab group, kind of put together this little Toshi, LIL apostrophe Toshi is his sort of name. And Hallie's been building them. There's a lot of just really fun artists that are actually sitting there with iPads, actually drawing on the iPad to prove that it wasn't just AI generated, right? They're posting videos of the creation of these items. And it's been fun to watch, and they love creating NFTs out of them. Now, the cool part about this is with Token Tiger, it's way easier, faster, so they'll be wanting to do it more. Plus, I think once we do the own rare integration, they'll be able to sell them too. So, and they can sell them as one-offs, or they can sell them as like, I'll create 10 and sell, So I think this will be a fun bit. And absolutely, I think the way you've made Token Tiger really easy to use, they're going to want to do it.
Cool. Yeah. And so that's just, I want to start finding and reaching out to other fan clubs, like fan art clubs, because this is a thing. Like in every great genre has like people that do this, that like do creative writing and artwork and all sorts of stuff. So it's a perfect application for just a fun little NFT app like Token Tiger. Okay, guys. Well, we should probably wrap it up. It's been an hour. Anybody have anything else they want to bring up before we call it a day?
No,
I'm creating more tigers. So just so you know, I'm creating more tigers. Go ahead, Aaron.
Nice.
Sorry.
Jerry said material tailwind is better in his opinion. I'm gonna have to check that one out, Jerry. I've just been using Tailwind, grabbing preset boxes, which is nice. And that's with them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know that material component or that material UI has been a pretty popular library. So it sounds like they combined them.
Yeah, I've used material for a few things, and it's all right. I've been trying to figure out HTML's new modal component. It's called what is it called? They just finalized it, but basically you can create a modal with it's not a side, it's begins with an A though, I think, but essentially it's inbuilt modal component, and you don't have to do all the styling, but it kind of goes against React practice because it affects the DOM directly. If I haven't been using it because but that was a new thing that came out recently with, so
Interesting. Well, cool. All right, guys. Well, let's call it a day. I appreciate you making time for this. Appreciate all your input. And Stoyan, if you want to blow our mind next time, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you can check until then both blockchain operating system.
Oh, okay. Boss. Cool.
It's one of the near projects.
Oh, okay.
They're saving the components source JavaScript or on chain, and you can clone it and have your own component. So it's very
Oh, cool.
decentralized. From
That sounds awesome. That sounds very cypherpunk.
Wow. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to call it a day.